Hello, everyone. Welcome. Nice to have you here this afternoon. This is the STARS Residencies information session, the STARS Residencies grant program. I'm Diane Daly. I run the program for the Mass Cultural Council. And with me are my colleagues, Amy Chu and Kata Swabeck, both of whom run the Creative Youth Development programs. They will be taking questions and answers. So if you have questions along the way that you would like to have asked, please put them in the Q&A, and we will gather them, and we'll be pausing throughout the presentation to take those questions and answer them. So here we go. Thank you for your patience. So this is the STARS Residencies information session. And the first question that we have is, what is the STARS Residencies program? STARS Residencies provides grants of $2,500 to $6,100 for residencies of 3 days or more in the arts, sciences, and humanities. And the residencies are partnerships between Massachusetts K-12 schools and teaching artists, scientists, humanists, and nonprofit organizations. Why is this important? Young people are important. They are our next generation. They are the people that will lead this world. And we want to do everything we can to help them in their development. So STARS Residencies help young people develop creativity and critical thinking, connect to their own voices, discover hidden talents, explore the natural world, and power the next generation. Today's information session, if it continues to go without too many more glitches, is going to cover the following: what's new for the 2022-2023 school year, the funding rates for this year. We'll talk about designing your residency. We'll talk about the online grants management system that you'll be using to submit your application. We'll talk about the review process for the applications. And then, as I said earlier, if you have questions, please put your questions in the chat, and we'll be pausing to answer those questions as we go through the session. New this year, who can apply has changed. We've done that so that there would be more access to the program. We're very interested in access, equity, and inclusion at the Mass Cultural Council, and we're doing everything we can across our programs to increase access. The deadline this year is October 25th at 11:59 p.m., and we will have help for you until 6 p.m. that day if you need assistance. We have the help desk, and I'll be talking about that a little bit later. The funding notification this year will be by email, as it was last year, and December 13th will be when the emails go out to let you know if you got a grant or not. We've updated the minimum and maximum grants, and that's also in recognition of the work that goes into putting together an application. We have new funding priorities to be able to support our effort to achieve equity across the program. And this year, no culminating event is required. We've done that because schools are still challenged getting their schools together in the way that they want to after the pandemic, and we don't want to add any more burden to that. So We're not requiring culminating events, but if you do want to do a culminating event with your residency, that's great. And this year, we're not requiring a budget in the application. It will still be required in the final reports. You'll still have to account for your expenditures, but we're not including that in the application to make it easier. Who can apply? As always, K-12 schools that are in Massachusetts with a Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education school ID can apply. They need the ID for this school year 2022 to 2023. But new this year is that cultural partners can apply directly. They need to have a school as their partner, obviously, and this includes teaching artists, scientists, humanists, and nonprofit organizations. And the nonprofit organizations must name the teaching artist, scientist, or humanist that will be leading the residency. A school may be involved in only one application per school year. So each residency has a school and a cultural partner working together to bring the residency to the students. Schools can only have one residency, and we're doing that because we want to make as many grants as possible across schools across the state. So schools may be involved in only one application per school year. So if we receive more than one involving the same school, we will be going back to the principal of that school and asking that person to make a decision as to which application to go forward. And we will not review the other application. The application asks if the residency has been approved by the school principal and the cultural partner. So you'll want to double check to make sure that there isn't another residency being applied for with that school. Let's go through the residency eligibility checklist. First off, as I just mentioned, this residency needs to involve a school recognized by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. It needs to be led by a teaching artist, scientist, or humanist from outside the school. It has to be approved by the school principal and the teaching artist, scientist, and or humanist leading the residency. It must be one unified residency that focuses on the arts, sciences, and humanities, even if multiple grades are involved. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. It must include a minimum of one session between each teaching artist, scientist, humanist, and their students on at least 3 separate days. We do that because we want to provide an opportunity for the students to create a relationship with their teaching artist, scientist, or humanist, because it's that relationship that helps make the residency engaging and have an impact on the young people. And it must start no early than September 1st, 2022, and end no later than June 30th of this coming year. We'll talk a second about funding rates. So we fund by the number of sessions in a residency. And a session is the creative learning time when the cultural partner is working with students. One session is 30 to 75 minutes working with students. 2 sessions is 80 to 120 minutes working with students. The rate per session is $150. The rate for planning is one $250 stipend for the cultural partner to pay them for the time that they spend working with the school to plan the residency. The minimum grant this year is $2,500. Last year it was $700. But we know that there's a lot of work that goes into putting together an application, whether you get funding or not. And we want to be sure that those who are funded are compensated for the time that they put in to make the application possible. So the minimum is $2,500, even if the residency is only 3 to 15 sessions. The maximum grant is $6,100, but there's no limit on how long a residency can be. So if you want your residency to go all year, you can do that. you will get $6,100 from this program, STARS program, and you may need to get other funding from other sources, but we encourage you to have as long a residency as you would like to have. The grant amount is determined by the number of sessions. So as we said, a session is compensated at $150 per session, 30 to 75 minutes. And we will be adding $250 for planning for the cultural partner. So the grant amount is the number of sessions times $150 plus $250 for the planning. Here's the good news. The online system does the grant calculations for you. The funds can be used for any residency expense except school teacher salaries, Questions? Amy, do we have some questions?
Yeah, I'll just read them out loud for you. So the first one is from Deb, and they said, will you share a list of potential cultural partners?
Deb, we don't have a list of cultural partners, and the reason for that is we believe that schools should have the opportunity to find whoever they would like to work with. So we don't have a list. There is a website called Creative Ground that's run by the New England Foundation for the Arts. It's creativeground.org, and cultural partners can list themselves on that website. So if you go to creativeground.org and look under education, you can see what teaching artists, scientists, teaching artists is just for artists are listed on that website.
Keita, do you want to take the next question? We can switch off.
Sure. And also, Dan, it's also possible, like if they wanted to, let's say, partner with the CYD organization, they could also check out like Youth Reach or like on our websites too, the funded programs that we have. Would that be
Okay.
possible?
Okay.
So the second question was, a town may have multiple schools, elementary, middle, high schools. Can each of them apply separately or part of the same application?
Yes, each school applies under its own application. So schools do not apply together, even if they're working with the same cultural partner. So each school submits its own application. It doesn't matter how many schools are in a district, each school is eligible to submit one, to be a partner in one application, whether it's submitted by them or the cultural partner. Another question?
All right, this one's from Lexi. They said, can schools from the same district apply? Example, if one of our middle schools applies, could our high school apply for a separate grant with the same teaching artists? I think you just
So yes, absolutely. That's definitely possible. One more.
Okay. Will you send all registered attendees a copy of the recorded webinar?
Thank you for asking that question. I should have said at the beginning, yes, we will not send a copy, but we'll be posting the link to it on our website. And that will take just a couple of days to get it organized, but you can look for it there. You can send me an email if you can't find it, and we can help you with that. Okay, let's talk now about designing your residency. Planning with the school and the cultural partner is key to an engaging and valuable residency. This is why we give one $250 stipend to pay cultural partners to plan with the school before and during the residency. It's that kind of partnership that makes a STARS residency valuable and engaging. What do the students need? What engages them? These are the kinds of information that teachers have about their students. That's why putting a cultural partner together with a teacher to plan the residency helps make sure that it's going to meet student needs. The other question is to ask is, how can the residency support the teacher's curriculum? And again, that's a conversation that a cultural partner and a teacher can have while putting together the residency for the application. Designing your residency, we'll talk about multiple cultural partners. They must be working on the same residency. So you can't have two residencies going on in a school if you have more than one cultural partner. Both of the, or all of the teaching artists, scientists, or humanists must be working together on the same residency. And each must work with their group of students for one session on at least 3 days. And again, as I mentioned, that's because we're very interested in having a relationship build between the teaching artists and the students to help engage the students. Pardon me. If there are multiple grades involved, again, it needs to be one residency. All grades must be working under the same unifying theme, same content adjusted for grade level. Location. This year, a residency can be either in-person, remote, or hybrid. We're only asking you to click on a checkbox in the application to let us know what that will be, but it's up to the school and the cultural partner to determine what's the best way to deliver that residency. And as I mentioned, no culminating event is required this year. So let's talk about learning objectives. Learning objectives are the cornerstone of your residency. They are the clear and measurable skills, knowledge, and or understandings you want students to develop through their residency experience. The key, as I've been saying, is to develop these collaboratively between the classroom teachers and the cultural partners. That's the best way to make sure that it's going to meet students' needs. And then after it's all over, what do you want students to know, understand, or be able to do? So let's talk about an example of what a learning objective might be. This is one that would be not considered a strong learning objective. Its students will be exposed to artwork from the Surrealist movement. And it's not a strong one because there's no end result or way to assess the learning. It's not that you need to assess learning in the residency, but we want to be sure that the learning is concrete and measurable. A strong way of putting that learning would be to say students will identify key characteristics of the Surrealist movement. So there is an end result to the learning. Learning objectives also need to be reflective of the student's learning, not the cultural partner or the teacher's instruction. So an example of a learning objective that would not really meet this is if you said, introduce primary colors. That's not student activity or student learning. It's a teacher doing some teaching for the students. A strong way of putting together a learning objective for that kind of residency would be to say students will identify and use primary colors in a work of art. As you can see, it's about students' activities, students' understanding, and what students can do. The third learning objective that we ask for in the application is a socially conscious learning objective. And we're doing that for all the reasons that we all understand, which is learning is most important that can have an impact on the world around us. So it's creative learning that helps prepare students to be positive contributors to their world. For example, does the residency experience teach equity and inclusion? Does it connect students with their own voices and cultures? And does it connect students with the world around them? So we'll pause again for questions there because that's quite a bit right there. Any questions, Amy or Kata?
The first one for Rita is, are the funds meant to include the supplies being used?
Yes, the funds that you get are to be used for any residency expense that you want except teacher salaries. So it would include the materials, anything else as an expense as part of that residency that you want to use the funds for.
But that would also include teaching, I mean, it could include teaching artist salary, not the teacher's salary, right?
Yes, thanks, Kata. That's an important distinction. It would be the cultural partner, the teaching artist or scientist or humanist. Yes, absolutely.
Another question is, do you need to include your creative partners in your proposal? Do they need to have a statement?
You must have identified your creative partners before submitting an application. And as I've been trying to emphasize, what's really important is that the residency be planned between the school and the cultural partners and the cultural partners and the school. It's that partnership that makes these residencies work. So you do need to know who you will be working with. Both if you're a cultural partner applying, you need to know what school you're working with. And if you're a school, you need to know what cultural partner you'll be working with.
And does the cultural partner need to have a statement in the application?
No, there's no statement required.
All right. Can the residency be done after school, or must it be done during class time?
Yeah, good question. The residency can happen after school. It needs to be an after-school program that's run by the school whose residency application this will be. But yes, absolutely, it can happen after school.
Do we have time for one more?
Sure.
Is there a deadline for submitting the final report in order to apply by October 25th? And what does guidance look like in helping a school submit a final report?
So if you were a grantee last year and your final report hasn't been submitted yet, we've had some issues with that. Please get in touch with me because I can help you get that done. And yes, it needs to be submitted before you can receive funding for this coming year, but it doesn't need to be in before the application on the 25th. We're having a little bit of challenge with the program, so get in touch with me and I can help you. One more?
When you say one session on at least 3 days, does that mean each and every student must participate in all 3 days?
Each student must be able to work with the cultural partner a minimum of 3 times. Now, obviously, if the student is ill or not there that day, then that's fine. But it's about, think of it as a class or a group. That class or group needs to work with the cultural partner on 3 separate days. Okay, moving on. So now we're going to talk about the online application system. This is the online system that you're going to use to write your application and submit it. Let me say at the beginning, the frequently asked questions on our website under STARS has the information that you need to know how to register in the system, how to use the system, and how to get to your application in the system. Kata is putting a link in the chat to let you know what that web URL is to get to the FAQs. But just go to massculturalcouncil.org, look for STARS Residencies, and the frequently asked questions are under that part of the website. So it will help returning applicants answer the questions: am I already registered? I forgot my password. What if my email has changed? So information to help you with those questions is in the frequently asked questions. For new applicants, you will see how to register and whether you should register as an individual or an organization or school. It's simple and good instructions, and it's all there for you. And here is the URL, but Kata has put it up on the on the chat. If you register as a school, the primary contact for the application is the one who registers on behalf of the school. So that would be the teacher, principal, or department head that is the project contact for the residency. You will, as a school, select organization when the system asks you which type of registration you will be completing. It asks you whether it will be an individual or an organization, and schools are considered an organization. So you will search for your school name in the field at the top of the registration page. And again, that information is in the frequently asked questions. The grants management system has an organizational profile for every school in Massachusetts that has an identification number with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So if you cannot find your school, contact me and we can figure out. In many cases, it's because the school goes by a different name. And anyone from your school can create a user profile connected to the school and log into the system. So the school can connect to many different users. What if I'm an independent teaching artist, scientist, or humanist? How do I register? That's also in the frequently asked questions. If you're not part of an organization, say Mass Audubon or Express Yourself or some other organization, you would register as an individual. So when the system asks you what type of registration you will be completing, you pick individual. So teaching artists who are working independently will register as individuals. And register as an organization, the application will list the organization as the applicant and you as the primary contact for the application. So that means that the school will be the one to receive the funds if the application is approved, or the cultural organization will receive the funds if the application is approved. I also want to let you know that there are many of the cultural organizations are already in the system as well. So what happens if I can't find my nonprofit organization on the list? You must register the organization manually, and I'm going to send you back to the frequently asked questions. You need to know that it could take up to 2 business days for your organization's registration to be reviewed. It's being reviewed to make sure that we connect it up with the right funding opportunities in the agency. So you want to be sure to start your application before the application deadline, October 25th, by at least 3 days. So don't leave it to the last minute. We can't review the organization registration in any less than 2 business days. What if your email has changed from last year? If you had already registered, but for some reason your school, for example, has changed emails, or your cultural organization has changed emails, or your personal email has changed. If you registered last year, log in with your email and password that you used from last year, and then you'll go to your profile and update your email address. And if that doesn't make sense, we have a help desk that can help you too. One thing that's important on this application is the opportunity to invite a co-applicant. So if you are a school and you're working with a cultural partner, you can start your application and invite the cultural partner to be a co-applicant, which means that they can work with you on the application and the final report. They can get into it on the system. You have to do this during the application preparation phase, not after it's submitted. So it has to be done when you're working on the application. How do you do that? Go to the frequently asked questions. It's a step-by-step process, and that the FAQs will be able to help you with that. This is also for cultural partners, teaching artists, nonprofit cultural organizations who are applying with a school. So you, as the primary applicant, you teaching artist, scientist, or humanist, can invite the school to be a co-applicant. And then they can work with you on the application as well. So you would be submitting the application, but they can work with you on it as well. So our help desk is available because working with the grant management system may pose some challenges for you. We hope not. Last year, people said it worked pretty well and they liked it. So, but we do want to make sure that we're there to help you with assistance for registering and accessing the online application. Here's the email that you would write to: grants_help_desk@art.state.ma.us. Let's pause for questions again. Kata or Amy?
Apurva said, can we reimburse the travel expense of the teacher if they're coming from an international destination?
You mean the teacher, not the teacher, if it's a school teacher, the teaching artist or the humanist or the scientist. Yes, you can use those grant funds for any expenditure except teacher salaries.
Oh, sorry.
Another question?
Yes. Are there examples of successful applications available to look at anywhere, perhaps with all the identifying information removed?
We don't have that. We used to in the olden days when we had paper copies of all the applications, but we don't have them anymore. It's all online, so we don't have that. If you need assistance with your application, please let me know. That's what I'm here for, is to help you put it together. And we have until October 25th, so don't wait to the last minute, but contact me as soon as you can, and we can talk about the kinds of things that you would want to consider in putting together your residency and your application.
And we'll put your email in the chat here, because the question directly relating to that is, can we email you directly if we're having any trouble registering and starting our application?
You can, absolutely. If you're having trouble getting registered or starting your application, the help desk is really the email that you want to send a request to for assistance. If you send your email to me, I will forward it to them as well. So either way, send it to me or send it to the help desk, and we can get you assistance. Another question?
Lexi says, our teaching artists are international. We are serving as a cultural host for them to do a residency in our local school. Is it okay that we are applying on their behalf in collaboration with the school?
Let's see if I understand that. The teaching artist, as long as you're partnering with them, they can be part of the application. They don't need to sign anything. You just need to have included them in the application as the ones that will be leading the residency. If that doesn't answer your question, please email me and we can talk about that directly. Other questions?
Heather said, are we still able to apply for our local cultural council grants if we have applied for a STARS residency grant for either the same residency program and or for a different program?
Yes, you can apply for local cultural council grants. Absolutely. Go ahead. We invite you to do that. That's a great idea. Application date is October 15th.
Can it be for the same residency program?
Yes, it can be for the same residency. Absolutely. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Motoko's question. If I myself apply as a teaching artist, would that simplify the payment process? You will just pay me, or would I still have to go through the town treasurer, etc.?
Great question, Motoko. This means that the grants, if you are the applicant, the funds would go directly to you. So you obviously need to have a school as a partner, but you would be the applicant this time. That's the big change that we've made, so that you can apply directly. Any more?
Yes, we have like about 5 more. Can the co-applicant be the one to click submit on the application, or does the submitter have to be the primary applicant?
Great question. Either the co-applicant or the applicant can hit submit. The co-applicant, once has been invited by the applicant, can do everything, including all the way up to submitting the application. And they also will be able to work on the final report. Okay, next.
If you're a teaching artist, how do you account for your own payment in the creation when you're creating your own budget for this? How do you account for your own payment?
You mean how much you are paying yourself for the sessions for the residency? That's your decision as to how you want to spend the money that you are receiving through the grant, what you think your time is worth, and how you can allocate the funds. So we leave that up to you entirely. The $150 a session is not something that we're saying is what the teaching artist must be paid or can only be paid. It's just how we calculate the grant. So what the teaching artist, scientist, or humanist is paid is something that's decided by that cultural partner and the school. One more?
Okay. Someone said I may have missed the answer to the deadline for final report question.
Oh, get in touch with me and we can work it out. The final report needs to be submitted before you can receive any more grant funds from Mass Cultural Council. Okay, we will press on. So let's talk about application tips. Most important, there are character counts on each one of the narrative answers that includes spaces and punctuation. So look at the application. There's a PDF of it on our website if you don't want to get into the grant management system yet. Check out what those character counts are, and be sure to count the characters and spaces and punctuation in your answers that you develop before you put them into the application. Make sure the learning objectives are about what students will learn. That again is what we talked about a little bit earlier. Not what the teacher will do, but what the students will learn. Most important, the session narratives, the description of what's going to happen in the sessions should be detailed, because you want the reviewer to understand what the students will be doing, what the cultural partner will be doing, and what the teacher will be doing to extend the learning before and after the residency sessions. So people have been assuming that the residency, that the reviewers know what the cultural partner does. And you can't assume that. You must assume that the reviewer doesn't know anything about the school or the cultural partner. So you want to provide a complete description of what those sessions are going to be, because that's how the reviewers rate the application. So again, what the students will do, what the cultural partner will do, and how teachers will extend the learning. There's quite a bit of space in that narrative section for you to provide that information. So please take advantage of it. Provide the information that's asked for in the question. Seems simple, but what we put together the questions in a way that helps guide you through your answer. So pay attention to what we're asking for. If you answered that, those questions, you can do a pretty good job at putting together a good answer. Assume the reader knows nothing about your work. And most important, if you have residencies that are multiple sessions, 20, 30, 50 sessions, you can bundle the sessions together when you describe them, but try not to bundle too many together, because we still want to know how the residency is progressing. So if you have questions on whether your bundling is too much, please get in touch with me and I can help you make that decision. So now let's talk about the application review. The applications are reviewed by people from Outside the agency, we have a diversity of race, gender, location in the state, and discipline on the panel. The reviewers will score on 2 review criteria using a 5-point rubric, and those are listed in the guidelines. So if you look in the guidelines, you will see what the rubric are, and it will also show you what the what the review criteria are. We'll talk about those right now anyway. There are 2 review criteria. The first is the strength of the learning objectives, which is why we talked about what makes a strong learning objective. And the second is the connection of the residency activities to the learning objective. Is it clear and are they attainable? That is why we are really encouraging you to provide detail on what those residency sessions are and what the activities are, so that the reviewer can see how they are connected to the learning objectives and whether they're attainable. The scoring rubrics are in the guidelines, and if you read them and have questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me and we can clarify that. So what is the review process? We are going to review all eligible applications received by the deadline. We are going to score by the outside reviewers using those 2 review criteria and the rubrics that we talked about. There are some priority scores that get applied to applications, and we will talk about that in a moment. The applications will then be ranked by their score, and the highest scores will be funded first. Those with the same score will be randomized as to which comes first in the lineup, and we will fund down the list until all the funds are allocated. In the review process, we're this year introducing application priorities. And the reason for that is, as I said, Mass Cultural Council is doing everything we can to improve equity and access across the programs in the agency, and that includes the STARS Residencies program. So we are going to give extra weight to applications from first-time applicants or applicants that have not received funding from Mass Cultural Council in the last 3 fiscal years. We will also be giving additional scores to schools in cities and towns that are below the state's median household income and below statewide educational attainment, which is the percentage of adults who have attained at least a bachelor's degree. And there's a link to that list in the guidelines. Schools with student populations that are 50% or more Black, Indigenous, and or people of color, as reported by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, will also receive some priority scores for this program. And then finally, if we don't have enough funding to fund all of the applications, we may, to ensure that as many applicants as possible can receive funding, we may further prioritize the applications that are not receiving other FY23 Mass Cultural Council funding, that means funding this year, or those that submitted only 1 STARS application. So this, again, is an effort to be able to provide funding to as many as we can across the state. I've had people say to me, does that mean we shouldn't apply? No, please apply. We don't have any idea how many applications we'll get, who will be applying. If you have a residency and you would like to have that happen in your school, or you would like to provide it to a school, please apply. It will help us to be able to make funding available to as many schools as possible throughout the state. As I said earlier, the notification date is going to be Tuesday, December 13th. all applicants will hear by email whether they will receive a grant or not. So it happens on December 13th. If you don't hear, you can get in touch with me, but you want to make sure that your email is set to receive emails from Mass Cultural Council. So that's another place to pause for questions. Other folks have questions?
Okay. So what constitutes a single session? As a potential cultural partner, we have attendance limits to maintain program quality. So we might need to divide the students into smaller groups if we do residency with an entire grade or multiple grades. Would a single session be the time it takes to teach the entire grade the same information, or each individual meeting with a group of students in the same grade?
It's each, if you have to take a classroom and divide it up and do 3 different sessions, then that each one of those groups counts as one session. So it's not when you finally have finished the whole class, it's where each group of students. So the session again is 30 to 70 minutes for a single session. And if it takes you 30 to 70 minutes to work with each one of those groups of students, then that's a session for each one of the times that you meet with students.
All
Other
right.
questions? Yep.
Okay, so will there be 3 different proposals if we plan to have the same artist for 3 different schools in our towns? And will the total budget then be 18,000?
No, it's each is its own application. So you want to think of it as each one as its own project. So it doesn't, it could still can be the same teaching artists across the district or the schools or how many schools you're involving, but you need to think of each application as standing on its own. So each application is eligible for funding for up to $6,100, depending on how many sessions there are in the residency, right?
But that's okay to use the same artist. If that same artist was in 3 different schools, it would be 3 different applications. Yep.
Exactly, exactly.
If you are a co-applicant and you work for a cultural organization, does that mean others in the cultural organization cannot apply for another STARS grant?
Great question. Thank you for hitting on that point. There's no limit to how many applications a cultural organization or a cultural partner can submit. It's only a limit on how many residencies the schools can be involved in. So how many applications the schools can be involved in. So schools may be involved in only one application, but cultural partners can submit multiple applications. So if you're a cultural partner and you're the applicant for a district where you're working with 3 different schools, you will be submitting 3 separate applications. That's fine. There's no limit on how many applications a cultural partner can submit.
All right. And then how many, well, it says here, how many funds are allocated for this program, but maybe it's like also how much funding is allocated for this whole program?
Yeah, what's the budget?
Yep.
It is, I'm gonna have to send me an email on that. I don't remember what the exact numbers are, but if you send me an email, I will let you know. But it's a substantial amount of money. It's the most that the STARS program has ever been budgeted for, thanks to our legislature, who makes the funds possible. Anything else?
Are the character accounts only available on the portal?
No. If you look on the our website there and go to the web page with the guidelines, there's a sample application PDF that you can see, and it has the character counts on it. So take a look at that. You can see it before you go into the portal. Great question. Thanks for asking that.
Yeah,
One
Kita
more.
just sent that into the chat.
Oh, good. Thanks, Kata. One
Yeah,
more?
we might want to double check that though, because I was just looking at it myself and I don't see those counts. So anyways, we'll check into that a little bit further.
It's, they're there for the narrative sections. We'll double check, but they're there for the narrative sections. They're not on every answer, every
Oh, yeah.
part
So
of the
they're in
application.
they're small in the parentheses where it says 250 characters, including spaces. Yep.
Yep. Okay, good.
All right.
All
So,
right,
oh, wait,
last
can
question.
we,
Okay,
oh, yeah. So we'll have the link. We'll be sending the link to this recording, as well as, will there be the link to the slides as well as a PDF, like the PDF of the slides?
Kata, can we do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yes. Glad to do that. Let me know if you want them. Okay, so we're here to help. I'm here to help in particular, but I have other folks at Mass Cultural Council who are there to help you as well. And I have a new email address. It's diane.daly@mass.gov. So it's shorter than it was and it's simple, and that's the email that we're using now. I also have a phone number that you can call. It's 617-858-2709. Please leave a voicemail. It will be delivered to me. Please speak slowly so I can get your name and your email and your phone number. Take the time to make it really clear, because sometimes I just can't catch it. And then, as I said, we have this wonderful online application help desk. They are wonderful people. They're very helpful, and they're there to help you to be able to manage the system. So again, that's grants_help_desk at art.state.ma.us. Email them whatever question you have, and they will get back to you. And again, we will have help available until 6 p.m. on the due date for the applications of October 25. So I want to thank you for your work on behalf of the young people of Massachusetts. It's wonderful that you are out there doing wonderful things for young people. We get final reports every year on the residencies, and the number of stories that we get of young people who have come out of their shell, young people who weren't talking in class until the residency came, of young people who have discovered a new passion in their life, of young people who have stood up and taken a leadership role. It's life-changing work, and you are out there doing it, both the schools and the cultural partners. We thank you very much, and we're here to help you in it, whatever way you need to be able to apply for the program. So thank you, everybody. Do we have any more questions that really need to be answered? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Good night.